Last time on Digital Devil Saga, Surf and the gang struggled to understand the humanity suddenly given to them, all the while cursed to live and fight as demons. With other tribe leaders either betrayed or having given themselves into their great hunger for flesh, Team Embryon has no choice but to conquer every last fighter. With Varen furious with his defeat, he drops a bombshell that shook the group to their core, revealing that they are already dead and stuck in a digital world. Sarah, finally remembering the truth, decides to stop Angel, forcing the eating fighters to chase after her. And as the world they knew began to vanish, they took on the true threat of Angel, the very same person who cursed them to become monsters. Through an epic struggle of might and magic, they soundly defeated the Mad Woman, ending her reign on the junkyard for good. Unfortunately, time has run out for this world. The tower they were on suddenly explodes, sending them all into the real world. Will the gang be able to reunite and combat the rest of Angel's forces? Will God's wrath prove too much for even a trained army of demons? What is Heat doing with the enemy? And will Akechi's character be fixed with the release of Persona 5 Royale? All of this and more, except the last one, will be answered today on this review of Digital Devil Saga Z.
For this section, I'll only talk about the new things about the gameplay since I pretty much covered it all in the first game. Everything is relatively the same, just with a slight change in graphical style, like with the press turns, the menu, etc. The music is also different, and I honestly love the battle themes here way more than the first game. The first title had slower tracks, which were alright, and I had no reason to complain. But this time it feels faster, which gets me more energetic for a fight. Plus, this is the game that introduced the song I want to hear whenever Jack Frost or the Omikanes appear. Speaking of those two, Jack Frost will occasionally appear to quiz you on the knowledge within both games. Each answer will grant you an item, though you can only answer 20 at a time and only if you are on a winning streak. And then after that, you have to pray the RNG is kind enough to offer another encounter. It took me 16 hours before he next appeared, so have some magic greed and grinding hours set aside. By answering them all correctly, you will gain a bonus fight and an item in the final dungeon. The Omikane, however, have changed drastically. No longer can the guns work on them, and you have to rely on several different elemental spells. Each one is weak to a certain type of spell, and while they do have patterns, it's basically kinda random. Also, you cannot cheat and just use spells that hit everyone. I learned that the hard way. Leveling up also grants one new benefit, receiving extra items from your comrades. Even Surf can stumble upon some after leveling up, and it's handy receiving some of those and having some dialogue with your friends, however small it is. The mantra system has also undergone some changes. Instead of lines, now it's just a hexagon, with each piece representing a set of skills a character can learn. You can even look at the type and try to head towards that path, and it's even possible to skip lower tier spells entirely, for when one skill is mastered, the one closed off will open. For example, I can learn good healing magic, and then segue into the higher tier fire level spells without much issue. However, there is merit to learning skills around certain dark colored hexagons. If a group of characters each learn a skill around that particular one, it will suddenly unlock for everyone. This can either mean a new skill anyone can master, or grant them all a bonus stat, so it's in your best interest to unlock those ASAP. However, at certain points you will start temporarily losing characters, so by the time you get them back, those characters will be far behind your team. Remember how I kinda left Cielo on the sidelines? Well, now I'm forced to use him for a few dungeons since I had little choice. Status effects also seem to have more effects. I found a few interesting facts about them in the Jack Frost quizzes, but the ones I found the most interesting were Curse and Panic. Curse was already terrifying enough by having the amount of damage you dealt to a foe also affecting you, unless you kill them. Now this lowers your chances of surviving Mudo-type spells. Panic though, oh dear lord this one. A new thing characters can do is drop money. The amount they drop is kinda weak, but the stuff you drop is— holy crap, Sarah, no! Oh my god, all my life savings. No wonder no one likes you. Even Cielo is better than— you son of a bitch, how dare you! Gil, please, for the love of mercy, talk some sense into these motherfuck— No, I need that money for mantras! Stop it! Stop doing this to me! That dolphin from Senran Kagura will murder me for— I would like to apologize for that. Suffice to say, in a game where money matters a lot thanks to these stupid mantras, I wish this wasn't a thing. Hell, I wish skills also didn't require me to keep traveling back to the save points just to buy new ones. At least stuff like this, with fusions anyways, was fixed with the likes of SMT4 and Strange Journey, having it accessible at any time. Also, one annoying thing is that despite humans capable of transforming into demons, you gain no AP, nor can they be devoured, so when I'm constantly running into these type of enemies, I'm more annoyed than ever at this game. It's like it suddenly wants me to wait for them to transform for no good reason, out of, what, honor or something? Okay, I know Lupa was saying something about that stuff, but I don't think he meant this. Fortunately, the game is also more lenient with field hunts. This time you don't need to hit every single orb just for the Metama to appear. Just hit a few, the Metama will automatically appear, and now you have a time limit based on how many orbs you manage to hit. Very simple, and I wish it was like this from the start. Just as soon as you find one, use it immediately as these areas are temporary. Another new addition is Berserk mode. The solar noise in the upper left didn't have much impact last time beyond selling items and certain skills to gain more critical hits and other stuff. This time though, being around max solar noise is dangerous, as there is a chance your characters can enter a fused state between demon and human, their skin darkening and an appendage or two made of pure demon. As the name implies, they have gone crazy and cannot use skills properly beyond hunting moves, and suffer a decrease in accuracy and defense. However, the trade-off is an increase in power and chances for critical hits, and more importantly, doubles the amount of experience gained. It can even pierce through any defensive barriers. It's important to know if you want to fight or run away, as this can easily get you a game over if you're on the bad side of that coin flip. And let's face it, this is a Shin Megami Tensei game. Coin flips aren't exactly kind. But my own luck wasn't that terrible. Just be near a save point for safety. However, I also think this is why some stated how the encounter rate wasn't as ridiculous as before, because it does tone down around max solar noise, likely to ensure you can't over-level or go into fights in an easily killable state. Fortunately, I was able to run away at any opportunity, so if you miss an attack, feel free to run like hell. Remember how I said there were no pieces of equipment in the last review? Well, this game fixes that by adding in rings that can add a variety of special properties, such as doubling your power briefly but lowering it over time, raising your stats, and far more that I didn't even use because I was focused more on rings you could gain from your save data. Importing that grants bonus stats and cash along with story decisions, but it also grants you bonus stat rings depending on the special bosses you beat. For the purposes of this review, I imported a save where I did kill those bosses just to show off what you can get. These rings tend to block out certain spells, which is extremely handy, especially the one you get from beating Beelzebub. You can also augment them with gems to add some more stat bonuses. It doesn't break the game and isn't really that necessary, but I'm glad they added in this option, and it offers a much needed incentive to beat the extra bosses. And yes, this does include the Demi-Fiend, who I never beat due to RNGesus having a bit of a hate boner for me. This game also hardly holds your hand either. At first it kind of does, reintroducing old mechanics through gameplay while also teaching you about the new stuff, and honestly the enemies and bosses were fairly easy, until I got to the one area where I have to free prisoners. This was my first difficulty spike in Game Over, where enemies already had second tier level spells and my own damage output seemed insufficient, especially when these pink monkeys keep calling for reinforcements. This was all under 2 hours as well, forcing me to grind, and I started to remember why I didn't really enjoy this game as much. Yet it's still perfectly beatable because the game still gives you the necessary tools. It might feel overwhelming at times, especially when enemies quickly gain the third tier magic, and a few bosses even wreck me when prepared, but given the short length of this game by normal RPG standards, things are not impossible. There are a few interesting boss battles too, like this one where an enemy uses magic to escape damage, so you need a reflecting shield for the right spells to hit it right back at him, thus dispelling his uber buff. I should note that I barely use the ring system, so my suckiness could also be attributed to that. Overall, still solid gameplay and the new additions are welcome, even if some things are more annoying than others. How well does the story conclude? Let's take a look right now into this spoiler section, which will pretty much cover the entire review, and I've taken out conclusions because, well, I think you guys can get the gist of everything when I'm done the story section anyway. Oddly enough, the game spoils itself right at the very beginning, with child forms of the characters now being a thing, and a grown-up version of one of the kids they ended up helping, whose name is Fred. He basically explains how everything in the end is apparently made from data or something, God included, so that's kinda meant to explain some of the shenanigans in the game. Basically, just think of that time in Digimon where the human world was fusing with the digital world. And that's honestly the best explanation I can give without spending another 10 minutes trying to dissect this, and that would just be me sitting with a wooden plank nailed to my head like frickin' Patrick. We then cut to what the gang is actually up to. Almost everyone forced to split apart after that calm of life erupted around them at the end of the first game. They learn of what happened in the real world, how everything became corrupt and just accelerated the destruction of the planet, pissing God off something fierce. He eventually made the sun black, which resulted in the sun turning most humans into stone should they step into the light. Other humans are able to transform into demons and hunt down anyone they deem weak that are hiding underground. The Resistance is having trouble until the gang arrive and deal with the threats, though aren't trusted since they could turn into demons, and that whole cannibalism thing isn't exactly helping. The new playable character, Roland, is the leader of the group, and drowning himself in alcohol. Considering the state of the world and his age, it's not surprising he's suddenly turning into Tony Stark during his drunk saga. We also learn Argyle doesn't have a taste for booze. He reveals what really went down with the junkyard. It was a simulation pitting different types of people and weaponry to determine which team was the most useful. This is reflected with how in the previous game every tribe seemed to have their own style and weaponry, like the Vanguard specializing with different crossbows, the Maribel being more revealing with some kind of punk rock style, the Solids relying more on traps to deal with their foes while holed up in a fortress, and the Solids taking a military approach that is more in line with what the Karma Society uses, minus the big lance guns. The winners would have been uploaded via a data chip into the soldiers, likely through their helmets. They also learn that Sarah helped create this hellhole, but the gang are skeptical about it and have faith in her. Fred also has the best reaction when Roland explains all of this.
Dude, you seriously need to lay off the booze.
Trusting Roland also becomes harder for some like Argilla due to how he acted cowardly, willing to kill comrades just because they are demons. Gil helps to point that out, with Roland fearing his comrade could have been overwhelmed by the hunger. He later gets over this though, becoming a demon of his own free will by injecting himself with the demon virus. From then on, the team has to work with Roland's resistance, the Loco Pola, which for some odd reason always makes me think of the Lalelu from Metal Gear Solid. Weird name, maybe, I don't know. That and the soldier that is also a merchant in enemy territory. They gotta save Sarah and also deal with the soldiers of the Karma Society, and hopefully reverse the damage to this world. Unfortunately for them, victories are not really possible. At least ones that matter, as they are used like puppets by the previous antagonist, Angel. The goal of the Karma Society is described as the game goes on, seeing citizens relish in living in a paradise where they can go into the sun thanks to the barriers, enjoy plant life, and anyone weak enough is turned to canned food to feed the demonic soldiers. Margot Cuvier is in charge of all of this, trying to save humanity by turning people into demons and beating anyone who would disrupt this so-called Nirvana. She really gives a reflection of Law, though I think the game tried to show some sympathy for her character, like a close-up shot that I think was meant to show her crying, as even she realizes this idea kinda sucks, especially when demons are hard to control and require a stable food supply. But when humanity is on the brink of destruction, she was kinda left with no other options. Heat is also revealed to have joined her side, showing no mercy to his former comrades, and even gutting Surf for good measure in another encounter. And it's during that moment that we learn what made God angry. Seeing the despair of Sarah. She is one of the only beings to communicate with God, and the way she does so is different. So seeing Surf seemingly die, which she doesn't, is enough for God to not just turn the sun black, but now is absorbing the world through data. Margot even shows despair at the idea of humanity being finished, lending some credence that she has a heart, small as it is, but is shot by Angel. All this time, Angel's been leading the group around for her own benefit, because she recognized humanity died a long time ago. And as much as I hate to admit it, she has a very good point. Humanity already devastated the world before the Black Sun came out with their greed, likely helping to cause global warming, excessive pollution, take your pick of natural disasters. The point is, the entire experiments with the Karma Society was to try and talk with God, using kids as cyber shamans and experiments, though many likely died. This does not help when the age of those kids accelerates, meaning Sarah is only about 7 years old in a grown-up body, which leads me to discuss the part of the game that instantly hooked me. The twist regarding Surf and Heat. When the gang go back to the egg facility to try and talk to God, they end up fighting He, who transformed into a truly horrific monster. While that fight is going on, Surf was healing inside the chamber that previously held Sarah, the water that sustained her slowly healing his wounds. During that time, the cat reveals himself as Schrodinger, and reveals the truth of what happened. During the last game, Varen, aka Colonel Beck, had made a revelation that he knew some of the members of Embryon, stating how Surf devoured Argilla and Sarah had helped cause this mess. Turns out Surf and the gang, minus Gale, were created based on memories Sarah held of their human selves in the real world. However, with the exception of Cielo, they were all lies. And the biggest and most heinous liar of all was Surf Sheffield. He lied to Sarah constantly, all to make sure she could communicate with God and fulfill his goals, even if it meant she could die or experience great pain. Heat was understandably angry when working with this prick too, as he cared a lot about Sarah, but hardly showed it as he couldn't keep his cool. So Zara viewed him as kinda scary. Argilla was also seen as kind and caring too, but was just working with Surf and likely manipulated by him, given what happens later. Given all the stress and everything, Sarah formed the AI counterparts as some sort of safe haven. which is about to be torn apart and formed into the junkyard by the urging of Colonel Beck, thinking he can use it to help create ideal soldiers. Yet even a dick like him hesitates when he brings up how this could endanger Sarah, given how she's rapidly aging. Sheffield's response?
Don't be concerned, Colonel Beck.
You know you got a lot of mouth, and I got a lot of fists for your mouth.
Oh, it only gets better from here. And by better, I mean worse. Thanks to Sarah in danger, Shepard keeps pushing on, which finally makes Heat lose his cool and pull out a gun. A clumsy scientist hits a camera feed to show everything, including a speech by Sheffield, and Heat being shot by Argilla, though she is very shaken by what she just did. Sheffield's boasting isn't just to Sarah either. Apparently it went to everyone, including Angel herself, who, by the way, is technically the parent of Sarah. So, witnessing everything she knew to be a lie and having the only person who gave a damn about her die before her eyes, God also sees this and helps doom humanity. Sheffield is turned into a demon and ends up devouring everyone in the room until he is eventually killed. He isn't the only Serf to die though, as apparently the white Barna that appears in the boss fight was the previous AI Sarah created. My guess is that Sarah, upon discovering the truth about Serf, discarded the old AI and made a new one. Why make a new one that was more in line with what she knew? Chances are, due to her extremely young age and mentality, she couldn't help but see Serf as her one true savior, but only a version she truly wanted and not just some fake. I'll discuss this a bit more later. Upon learning this, there's a boss battle, and apparently the dead can come back to life. I would question this more, but I wanted to beat the shit out of Sheffield after this, so I didn't bother. After beating both a black and white Varna, Serf is able to return. It's one of the few times things are looking up since by at this point, more characters were dying. The reason I'm going into more detail regarding this twist is because this was the most interesting part of the game for me. All the stuff later on dealing with enlightenment flew right over my head, as it is a concept I'm not familiar with, nor did the game effectively teach me about it, especially when everything about the story was proving how much one has to do in order to hold on to their humanity. Plus, the twist helped turn what I thought about the characters on its head, and I freaking love that. It was even foreshadowed in the castle in the first game with the good and evil prince, with Sheffield and Heat serving the roles respectively. But the twist was, despite being mostly static, likely Sarah not wanting to remember. The roles had been reversed, and she truly learned who was good and who was evil. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to make any changes to the other AIs, leaving Heat as a confused individual, who, while cared about her a lot, didn't quite know how to properly express himself and was often violent as a result. After this though, my excitement for the plot started to wane. Well, to be precise, once Serf and Sarah upload their data to God, all those character deaths and sacrifices kinda didn't mean a thing when everyone is suddenly together. I mean, there is at least an argument for Angel since Gale helped her find some peace before they killed each other, but it just comes across as something I did not want in my game. I'm sure a few people criticize Persona for being too lighthearted compared to the other Shin Megami Tensei games, or at the very least, I can see such criticisms, especially when in the end it's always the power of friendship and bonds that wins the day for every game starting at Persona 3. I didn't play Persona 2 yet. I disagree with that notion, mainly because I do like the Persona series, but I see Digital Devil Saga kinda taking such a route despite everything that just happened. The tragic and painful deaths of the characters, the impact is diminished. I can still find some reasons to find some character development or some finality to them, but that doesn't really help fix things. Sarah gaining the power of Serf, it's done through the tears of Argilla. The way this whole event started, through the despair of one girl that basically reminds me of Sonic 06 with Princess Elise. Well, okay, that last one doesn't really bother me as much, I'm just joking. But you get what I mean, right? This is all in service to the theme of enlightenment. For when Sarah and Serf fused into one being, that being takes on the role of God once they beat it up. The problem is, it's not really a concept explained well in this game at all. Honestly, didn't know what the hell I was supposed to think about this. Like, did I miss a data log or something? That's why I find both God and Schrodinger just there. They are just there, and my excitement for this game dies. Even the final dungeon... Actually, you know what? I do have some nice things to say despite my frustrations. I'm looking at you, Lilith. I do enjoy taking on most of the previous villains who failed to learn in life. It feels great shoving spells up Bat's ass. And of course, after what happened to Roland and Argilla, I am very happy at the payback they gain against Meganata. Barring the bullshit boss fight, that is honestly the hardest fight I ever endured in an SMT game, at least as far as mandatory bosses go. You can even meet the data of characters that died before the Earth was in danger and find interesting information. I felt it could have been cut down, like taking out Harley since he means absolutely nothing, and some of the puzzles require trial and error and are also super long if you fuck up even once. Still, it felt better to go through this dungeon than the last one, where the only good part was the ending to it, while the rest was just kind of okay. And even then, that final fight was underwhelming. Speaking of final fights, God, while underwhelming, has one of the best final boss soundtracks of all time. I will never take that away from this boss. And if you are wondering, yes, this is the same one used in the Solid Snake vs. Sam Fisher fight in Death Battle. But yeah, I'm not really qualified to talk about certain themes when it requires me to do research on a subject that, quite honestly, bores me. Stuff like this is why I'm so hesitant on covering stuff like the Devil Saga series, because I always feared receiving some negative feedback for not understanding the references, when I would prefer to enjoy character interactions and how the story is affected by them. Remember how I mentioned Evangelion? I used to love it until it got uber dark and the plot became harder to follow. The characters I knew going down a path that, in theory, could work, but just feels like a bunch of symbolism is thrown into my face, especially during End of Evangelion. Reviewing this game, however, I finally realized something important. I want to review what I like. I want to talk about what I like. The same thing goes for stuff I hate, but for stuff I don't really care about? Not really, unless I somehow feel compelled to do something, like with Mega Man X Command Mission. I mean, at the very least, that was because I liked the game a lot back then, but nowadays I'm just not... And the same thing goes for Shadow Hearts from the New World. Both of those games have great gameplay, but they're RPGs. Story is usually the most important part in an RPG, and I'm not invested in the stories of those games. And sure, the gameplay, again, it's good, but I'm not compelled enough to try out those games again. Again, though, I don't think this series is bad because of those flaws, and playing the game reminded me why I still enjoyed all of it despite a less than good ending. The characters are the reason I have very fond memories of this title and can still have fun with it. And to be honest, them getting a chance as reincarnated humans is wonderful and perfectly fitting, and I will never complain at the kiddie versions. Look at Biddy Heat. I could pinch his chinks if he wouldn't punch me in the crotch. Or possibly eat it. So let's discuss the characters, and fortunately, I have a lot of good things to say. We'll start with Argilla, since she is necessary to go over when going in depth into Roland's story. She's definitely the most compassionate of Team Embryon, the only one with a bigger heart than her being Cielo. From the moment she gained her humanity, she was disgusted with the idea of eating people to survive, and relented when there was no other option. However, she tries not to let it make her a monster, shown when she tries to stop Heat from eating Bad after the gang defeats him. She's not someone who enjoys senseless killing, which is why she tries her hardest to convince Janana they are comrades in arms, to help make peace when the two are drawn to each other through their conversations. Throughout the game, she learned to do whatever it takes to win and protect her comrades, all while questioning their lifestyle thanks to Bat's taunting. By the time we get to the sequel, she ends up being disgusted with the cowardice of Roland, who was willing to sacrifice a comrade who aided them purely because there was a chance they could go wild as a demon. She is equally disgusted with the people who live in the Karma Society, living in luxury without having earned a damn thing, and denying any support for those who live underground. Fighting at least made Argilla value life, not see anyone as insignificant or weak. To betray your comrades, to be a coward and a manipulative shithead like Bat was, it's the quickest way to piss her off. And this runs in contrast with our human self, who while acting nice, followed Sheffield because she liked him, I think. They were probably boning on the side. Either way, her human self is a piece of shit based on the dialogue you actually get out of her. Then there's Roland, who even in the intro is shown to be drinking and barely holding it all together. Given what has happened in the world, it's hard not to blame him. In order to gain info, he had someone go undercover as a demon, though later had them killed due to fear. However, that doesn't stop there. Fred's father, who was revealed to have been Lupa from the first game, was also killed, and Roland blames himself for it, unable to escape the guilt. Only when the Embryon demonstrates their might and the close bond they all share does he finally drop the booze, inject himself with the demon virus, and fights alongside them with the colors of Embryon, albeit with a reluctant Argilla. Though that's the last time they ever argue, since the story doesn't present itself to a lot of character interactions. However, that's where the death scene comes in. As the gang are in the power plant, Locapola is keeping Angel's army at bay. With no other option, she unleashes the Mega Nada. This thing is foreshadowed early on as a demon contained purely in ice, and there are times when it shakes, showing a very real possibility it could escape on its own. This demon was used to create the virus, and suffice to say, it tears through Locapola off screen. And after the boss fight, I can definitely believe it. In order to buy the gang some time, Roland decides to fight it himself, with horrendous results. Left with no other choice, and with the gang's plan to stop God failing, he decides to blow up the power plant. Argilla decides to stay behind to help, and good thing she did because Roland, well, yeah, kinda being food right now. Argilla takes this well. Unfortunately, she can't even come close to beating this monster and tries to blow up the power plant herself, with terrible results. Fortunately, Roland has just enough strength that he can do that for them, and she finally acknowledges him as a true comrade with just a stare. All as her neck is snapped by the Meganata. Using the last of his strength, Roland blows up the power plant, the three of them truly dead. And so ends their development. Maybe not Roland, since he technically can be used in the final battle, but I answer the questions to get heat instead. Considering what happened to him, he could use a break. Maybe get a bite to eat. Relax. Next is Gale, who I argue could have fit the main character role had Surf truly vanished. If only because he's the one who comes up with all the ideas and has a large connection to the main antagonist. He's also able to show some of the most emotional growth in slow increments, at first resisting the idea until he meets Lupa, the tribe leader of the wolves. For those wondering, yes, this is the same Lupa that died, helping to prove that some people who died in the real world, like Colonel Beck, ended up in the junkyard. Due to Lupa having a sense of honor, as well as revealing certain information the gang never even conceived of, even having dreams of a child, Gale begins to relate to him more and more. This is because Gale kept having visions of a girl crying who ended up being Angel. There are more examples too, like using his logic against Roland to try and discover the truth, even find Roland cowardly, as well as comfort Fred when they are unable to find his friend in the processing plant. All of this showed that while he wasn't the most expressive person in the world, there was still a heart within him, and even he was more human than some of the people working under the Karma Society. Hell, he even makes a bet with Cielo towards the end of the game, that I wish was touched on a bit more given how they are both able to battle God. Would have at least made for a funny moment. We could have seen Cielo dancing again. Unlike his comrades, he was not originally an AI. Part of his body was made from a human named David, who was the girlfriend of Jenna, aka Angel. He died in an attack of a facility by terrorists, Jenna stating how they thought the Stone People syndrome was contagious, and it wasn't. David died in her arms, asking her not to hate humanity, and this segues into Jenna's character. Just by me saying this, you're probably thinking I'm rolling my eyes at her, that losing a man is enough for her to destroy the world. However, I think there's far more to it than that given one key factor. Angel is a hermaphrodite. This is confirmed in the story as Sarah was made using the seed and egg of Jenna, making Sarah her daughter. Before you question this, I remind you that everything is apparently a Digimon and they have to eat people to survive, so just roll with this. Not to mention there's like tons of lab equipment and everything. The incident with the sun happened around 2020, and even before then, the world was turning to shit thanks to natural disasters, greedy corporations, and I'm so sorry I have to remind you of what is currently happening, so here's Trump getting a stone cold stunner. Anyway, my point is the world is screwed and stuff like prejudices against this kind of thing likely exists. There's already a hierarchy for people as some are driven underground, so who's to say there isn't some hatred against people like Angel? I even found an NPC that questioned if Angel was a hermaphrodite, which, wow, that is blunt and none of his concern. That's not going to suddenly make her a monster. Plus, I doubt he would ever say this to her face now, considering what she is capable of in the real world, taking down several troops without a single scratch. So, rewinding the clock for her, I can see relationships being hard to form, and always under the stress to perform her best just to maintain her position, along with all the other crap that's happening. Having someone who can understand and take care of you at that point would be very welcoming, and losing that person can feel like the world just died. Also, before the incident, she heard the speech Sheffel made about her daughter, so, you know, kinda just pissed off and gave up on mankind after David died. In her eyes, with everyone eating each other, the world was already screwed. It's why she unleashed the Meganata. It's why she killed Kubiye. Nothing matters anymore, and she is done with needless hope. That is until she keeps encountering Gale because he almost looks exactly like her former lover David. Their interactions aren't too long, but the finale shows just how much David's words affected her, with Gale saying how she ignored them all this time, leading her down this path. Afraid to face such a truth, she kills Gale, but hesitates afterwards, leading herself to be stabbed, and they both die in each other's arms. If you answer a certain question correctly, Angel will reveal she is at peace and finally treats her daughter with some decency, giving her the power of reincarnation, which is apparently an almighty type spell that puts the Meggy Dolan to shame. Thanks, Mom! No, seriously, this spell is freaking awesome if your magic stat is high. It's one of the only reasons I got through the final dungeon. The resolution on Angel and Gale's arc is alright. Much like with many characters, I just wish there were more scenes. It also helped that Angel could be really badass and didn't constantly hammer in she possesses both sexes. Because, well, considering Persona 5's humor on gay people, yeah, I think it would end up something like that or just poorly handled in general. I heard Catherine didn't exactly treat this kind of thing with dignity either. Cielo is up now, and surprisingly, we never see his human self. This is because, according to dialogue with NPCs and a wikia, he was like Sarah, a candidate to try and talk to God, but died during the process. But at least he didn't end up as lunch food by Sheffield. Much like Argilla, Cielo possesses a lot of heart, genuinely caring about Sarah and always wanting to make her happy, even to any possible detriment to himself or his allies. For example, when they tried to rig a battleship to explode to try and kill off some of the brutes, he tried to get the gang to think of another plan, and was of course unsuccessful. There are also the times he tries to save her, especially the last one, as he sacrifices himself to take out the Jets, his body parts being torn off as he races through them. Although what's kind of funny is that even he says it was kind of pointless given how they all ended up. He's the most emotional of Team Embryon, kind of feeling like the Michelangelo of the team without his IQ being questionable like some iteration. Sometimes, anyway. Anger is not really something he gets much of a chance to show off, preferring to try and keep the mood up even when things look dire, which makes his moment against the Karma Society that much more powerful. Once in the tower to try and rescue Sarah, they are pursued relentlessly by a group of soldiers that always made me think of the Ginyu Force or something along those lines. You know, despite being major threats, they do feel like comic relief sometimes. That is until the leader reveals he devoured his own comrades to become stronger. Cielo doesn't take it well, at all. Both he and Gale are able to point out how that man achieved wasn't strength, and I'm reminded of the dynamic Virgil and Dante had, where the pursuit of strength was making the former much less human, and ultimately pointless when they lost in the end. While the gang beat him, they never kill the guy, instead leaving him to mull this tragic fact over, and he is never seen again. Cielo might be comic relief a lot of the time, but he's necessary in keeping the hope alive in these rather dark times. Next is Heat, the traitor who ended up getting redeemed through his death. First time playing through, it was hard to scrounge up some sympathy for him. Now though, given the twist with Sheffield, he kinda never had much of a chance, especially when he had to learn what it means to be human. Remember, this AI of Heat was based off Sarah's perceptions, and she was just a kid, barely a few years old. Even in a flashback, the AI was still caring, getting angry at Sir for hitting Cielo and getting Sarah's attention, and nails him with a volleyball. There was good in him, but unfortunately given the nature of the junkyard, he can only express himself comfortably through violence. Even before he gains his humanity, he is seen smirking when he gains the power of a demon. There is clearly some pride in his fighting skills, and he's only willing to stomach it being tarnished when it comes to protecting Sarah, like letting Bat stab him in one scene. However, that keeps changing with Surf, who he keeps trying to one-up and ultimately fails. When it came to rescuing Sarah, he had the idea to defeat Surf and fool the bad guys. Admittedly, he told Surf about the plan mid-fight, but he references it when he makes aggressive moves on Sarah, including, yeah, that scene. At least he technically didn't know she was a child, but still, ew. There's another moment during the finale, when Sarah uses the programming to paralyze the AIs. Only Surf and Heat are able to move, with the latter clearly struggling much more, likely wounding his pride further. He even outright tries to murder Surf twice, and afterwards he is turned into a hellish nightmare and hard boss fight. Yeah, even prepared, he whooped my ass for a while, and was the reason I became broke. Thanks, Heat. He seems to embrace the new power, yet there is evidence to suggest that he wants Sarah and the gang to win. Why do I think that? The taunting. He constantly says how his attacks are dangerous, or to keep hitting him harder and harder. Dialogue like this, plus what happens afterwards, make it show that Heat may not have had full control, and is trying to help in his own way. And given what I said about his personality was formed, it makes more sense. Once Surf is revived and tears through him, reducing Heat to human form, he decides to challenge Surf one more time privately. Suffice it to say, it doesn't go well with a hole in your stomach. Now dying, he reveals his dialogue he didn't want to put any more blame on Sarah, considering everyone blames her already for the mess with God, plus all the bullshit she ended up going through because of him. Considering how Surf was able to see the events of the past thanks to the cat, plus I assume Gale learned of his past with Angel thanks to the kitty too, I assume Heat also knows the terrible truth about the real world. He helps the gang with his last breath, unless you answer some questions correctly, in which he redeems himself by fighting alongside them against God one final time. Given the scene, he is reluctant to do so, seeing the weight of his sins, all until Roland gives him a much-needed nudge in doing so. And I gotta say, if there is one positive about everyone coming back for the finale, it was this moment. Surf and Sarah will be the last two we will look at. Mostly Surf, since I think I gave Sarah enough of an analysis with everyone else's B-plot. I wish Surf wasn't a silent protagonist, but at the very least, there is a possible good reason. After witnessing the past, Surf laments about this, finally understanding how Heat might feel, and then has to team up with the human Heat to take down not just his own human self, but a white version of Varna. From what I could tell based on the dialogue in a wikia, this version of Surf was the original Surf AI Sarah designed and scrapped, This was due to finally seeing the truth about Surf and suddenly deleting the data, yet then she makes a new Surf, which is the one we control. I equate this to a moment when someone lets you down, so you throw away the thing you associate with them, yet later go back to recover the object as it still holds value. I imagine Surf is kind of the same way, with Sarah having nothing else to grab onto, so she just creates a Surf that's willing to fight for her, to protect her, and be the true decent human being she hoped Sheffield was. And again, rapidly aging character who has the mentality of a 5-year-old, so her plans aren't exactly the best. Look at the finale of the game as one good example. So this could explain why Surf rarely talks, since Sarah likely constructed it while not thinking clearly, much like with Heat. Plus, Surf shows off plenty of emotion, and proves he can care about his comrades time and time again. When the gang were feeling hopeless about Sarah disappearing on them in Game 1, it's up to Surf, and later Heat, to put the gang back in gear. He laments over the past when it is revealed to him, and of course expresses sadness at the sacrifice to Cielo. He even puts himself in harm's way, letting Heat stab him, just so Sarah and his comrades could escape. Granted, that also makes things go way worse considering Sarah's reaction, and how God decides to go with the nuclear option, but I think we can let that slide. He also sacrifices his body yet again, holding Sarah's hands as their data is uploaded to God and dies within the fire of the facility. His fusion with Sarah makes all the more sense too. She already takes on form and skills Surf previously possessed, somehow, so it wouldn't be stretching it if maybe Sarah put more of her own heart in creating this Surf. Maybe try and be all the things she is unable to become. A bit of a stretch, but it would make sense given how she is doomed to die and is just a little girl in a grown-up body. What's funny is that I used to hate Sarah a lot, finding her annoying and rolling my eyes at the idea of her singing being the one thing keeping everyone sane. After playing these games though, understanding the struggle she has gone through and being reminded how old she is, yeah, I can't help but pity her and admire her when she does try to save the world, no matter what people think of her, no matter how much damage her body has to go through. In a lot of ways, this reminded me a lot of Alice's sacrifice in Shadow Hearts, fighting to the last breath to help save the world above all else. The human aspect is what makes Digital Devil Saga so good for me. I mentioned how I prefer the neutral ending for Nocturne given my views on the Demi-Fiend, and how I love SMT titles because you can overcome the struggle with the darkness and despair trying to entice you. And despite a less than good ending, the entire struggle in overcoming it is the driving force of the entire story, to prove even if your body is that of a demon, there is a heart of a human inside, just like with the Devil May Cry series, and now I'm wondering why the hell there has never been another DMC crossover. Hell, this spin-off heavily shows how no character can succeed on their own either, how they need to come together and create combo moves, how the combat system punishes you for heavily losing teammates, and how trying to win with just one unit is, well, impossible. At least thanks to the Mega Nada, it certainly felt like that. Speaking of crossover, I wish I could go into more detail regarding the angels that appear in the game, as I harken back to the old series. Specifically Game 2 with this version of Satan appearing. They mention coming from a different world, and are also apparently affected by the demon virus, so they want to munch on stuff, I think, all while carrying out God's will. They were apparently sealed up like the Mega Nada until Angel decided to release them to cause more chaos. Unfortunately, I still haven't touched SMT2, so all I can say is, they're there. After replaying these games, I can honestly recommend Digital Devil Saga as one of the better entry points for newcomers to start with. Personally, I would still go with Raito Kuzunoha Hatu over this, if only because I think one of the major barriers of people getting into SMT games is the apocalyptic stuff, and Raito Kuzunoha Hatu lacks that. The only other titles I would recommend above that are the Devil Survivor games, since chances are you guys at least have a 3DS stored somewhere, maybe. And I doubt Atlus is going to re-release all these games unless SMT5 sells really well. Of all the titles I reviewed, the first Raito is easily the weakest. Not terrible, but not as good as I remember it. Raito Kuzunoha Hatu might be my new favorite after replaying it, as the themes connected heavily to me, and the characters are some of the best I've ever seen from the series. Digital Devil Saga is a bit on the lower tier, but not for bad reasons. Despite my feelings on some of these games, I certainly hope this series of reviews has at least convinced you to try the SMT series, or even sparked a bit of interest. Do you get it? Get it? Spark? Wink wink, please watch that review, please, I worked really hard on that one. I still can't believe I got through everything though. This has not been an easy series to marathon, and there's still the ones on the Super Nintendo which, yeah, I'm not in the right mindset to tackle those. Given my current stress levels, I think those games will legitimately kill me. However, I'm taking a much needed break from the SMT series, and diving into something I should have done a long time ago to make up for that crappy top 10 video I did. Finally, the age of giant robots is upon us, as we dive into Xena Saga. I'm the smartest moron, thank you for watching.